Three Brits are sitting around a fire, singing, laughing, and drinking beer. One of them takes a good long swig, then holds up the bottle to admire it. "You know why British lager is the best in the world," he says. "It's because we age it in barrels of fine oak. It gives it that unique flavour that you won't find anywhere else." "Ha! Come off it," his friend says. "Oak barrels? What a load of rubbish. Everyone knows that British beer is the best in the world because English soil grows the best wheat. That's what gives it that rich, flavoursome body." The third chimes in, "I don't know what you two have been told, but I happen to know that British beer is the best in the world because of the fine hops used." They all argue back and forth, and because it's late in the night, it starts getting heated. Then one of them stands up and says, lads, we can spend all night arguing. Or we can actually find out what really makes British beer the best. Let's get a sample and send it off to a lab for testing. Then we will know for sure." Everyone agrees that this is a great idea, so they put some of the beer in a jar, wrap it in a parcel, and post it off to the lab. A week later, two of the lads are sitting around the fire again when the third comes running along, waving a letter in his hands. "Look, lads, we got the results back." They opened the letter and read, "Dear sirs, we ran extensive tests on your sample. The results show normal liver and kidney function, acceptable blood sugar levels, and no signs of infection. We are pleased to report that your horse is in excellent health." There was a trial in a small town in Texas, and the prosecuting attorney called his first witness to the stand. She was a grandmotherly, elderly woman. He approached her and asked, "Mrs. Davies, do you know me?" She responded, "Why, yes, I do know you, Mr. Clark. I've known you since you were a young boy. And frankly, you've been a big disappointment to me. You lie, you cheat on your wife, you manipulate people and talk about them behind their backs. You think you're a rising big shot, but you haven't the brains to realize you never will amount to anything more than a two-bit paper pusher." "Yes, I know you." The lawyer was stunned. Not knowing what else to do, he pointed across the room and asked, "Mrs. Davies, do you know the defense attorney?" She again replied, "Why, yes, I do. I've known Mr. O'Leary since he was a youngster too. I used to babysit him for his parents. And he too has been a real disappointment to me. He's lazy, bigoted, and he has a drinking problem. The man can't build a normal relationship with anyone, and his law practice is one of the shoddiest in the entire state." "Yes, I know him." At this point, the judge banged his gavel to silence the courtroom, then called both counselors to the bench. In a very quiet voice, he said with menace, "If either of you asks her if she knows me, you'll be jailed for contempt." When Forrest Gump died, he stood in front of St. Peter at the pearly gates. St. Peter said, "Welcome, Forrest. We've heard a lot about you," he continued. "Unfortunately, it's getting pretty crowded up here, and we find that we now have to give people an entrance examination before we let them in." "Okay," said Forrest. "I hope it's not too hard. I've already been through a test. My mama used to say, life is like a final exam. It's hard." "Yes, Forrest, I know, but this test is only 3 questions. Here they are. Which 2 days of the week begin with the letter T? How many seconds are in a year? What is God's first name?" "Well, sir," said Forrest, "the first one is easy. Which 2 days of the week begin with the letter T? Today and tomorrow." St. Peter looked surprised and said, "Well, that wasn't the answer I was looking for, but you have a point. I give you credit for that answer." "The next question," said Forrest. "How many seconds are in a year?" 12. 12, said St. Peter, surprised and confused. "Yes, sir. January 2nd, February 2nd, March 2nd. St. Peter interrupted him. I see what you mean. I'll have to give you credit for that one too. And the last question, said Forrest. What is God's first name? It's Andy. Andy? Said St. Peter in shock. How did you come up with Andes? I learned it in church. We used to sing about it. Forrest broke into song. Andy walks with me, Andy talks with me, Andy tells me I am his own. St. Peter opened the gate to heaven and said, Run, Forrest, run! One day, the first mate of a pirate ship went below deck to speak to his oarsmen. Men, I have some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're going ashore for food and drink tonight. The men cheered and shouted their praises. The first mate then said, There will also be women. The men once again cheered and shouted their praises. The first mate then continued, But first, the captain would like to go water skiing. One Friday, a fifth grade teacher says, Class, every Friday I'm going to ask a question. Whoever gets the question right gets to skip school on Monday. So the class is very excited and can't wait until next Friday. Friday comes around and the teacher says, Okay, time for the question of the week. How many stars are in the sky? Of course, no one can answer it. Next week she asks, How many grains of sand are there on the beach? Still no one can answer. One student, however, is fed up with this. When he gets home, he paints 2 ping-pong balls black. He puts them in a bag and goes to school. When Friday comes around, he takes them to class. The teacher says, Okay, class, time for the question of the week. The boy quickly drops the balls on the floor and they roll up to her feet. The teacher says rudely, Okay, who's the comedian with the black balls? Then the kid says quickly, Bill Cosby. See you on Tuesday. An old farmer gets pulled over by a state trooper. The officer lectures him on how irresponsible it is to be speeding and does everything he can to get the farmer off balance. While the trooper is filling out a form, he keeps swatting at a swarm of flies around him. The farmer says, Having trouble with them, circle flies, officer? The trooper replies, Yeah, why do you call them circle flies? The farmer says, Well, they're usually seen circling round the back end of horses. Ah, I see, the trooper replies absent-mindedly. After a minute, the trooper looks up from his paperwork and says indignantly, Wait a minute. Are you calling me a horse's ass? The farmer says, Oh no, officer, I've got too much respect for the police to do that. Good, the trooper says. The farmer continued, Hard to fool them, circle flies though.